Good afternoon and welcome back. May I please request the esteemed panelists for our session 3 to kindly come up and take their place on the stage. I request you to kindly take your place on the stage. Dr. Shagun Sabharwal, Shri Raju Sharma, Shri Prabhakan Jain, Dr. Sushmita Parai, Mr. Subrat Singh, and our moderator for the session, Shri Shashank Rastogi. The third session, our third session today, is centered around the subject of what role can corporates and CSR play in supporting localization and realization of localized SDGs. So really looking forward to this third session post-lunch. We have 5 panelists, and very quickly and very briefly, let me start the introduction. I'm going to start with Dr. Shagun Sabharwal on our extreme left. She is the Asia Program Director for Co-Impact. She leads the Co-Impact Program strategy and grant making not only in India but across the entire Asian region. She is a social policy and development leader with demonstrated experience building partnerships for achieving use of evidence and policy. She is deeply passionate about creating a world full of opportunities that enable leadership, particularly of women and young girls. And over the years, she has led several different portfolios supporting governments to work towards evidence-based solutions. Our next panelist is Dr. Sushmita Parai. Ma'am, welcome. She's Senior Manager with the Tata Trusts, and her work experience covers strategic program development, aligning particularly with what we are here discussing today, SDGs, in collaboration with government, with non-government, corporate partners. So, जो सरकार समाज बाजार की जो हम बात कर रहे हैं उस पर आप काम करती हैं, और as a qualified veterinarian, she pioneered in bringing science and technology for the benefit of marginalized farmers to increase their income and food security. तो आपने कई अंतर्राष्ट्रीय संस्थाओं के साथ में काम किया है. वर्तमान में आप, जैसा मैंने कहा, आप टाटा ट्रस्ट में सीनियर मैनेजर के पद पर कार्यरत हैं. हमारे अगले पैनलिस्ट श्री सुब्रत सिंह जी हैं. आपका स्वागत है सुब्रत जी. आप एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर हैं फाउंडेशन फॉर इकोलॉजिकल सिक्योरिटी, और 27 वर्षों से ज़्यादा आपका अनुभव महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दे, उदाहरण के तौर पर ज़मीन के मुद्दे, पानी के मुद्दे, नेचुरल रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट, कम्युनिटी गवर्नेंस, पॉलीसेंट्रिक गवर्नेंस, पब्लिक पॉलिसी, इन तमाम चीज़ों पर आप काम करते हैं. सुब्रत जी, आपका आज के इस तीसरे सत्र में स्वागत है. हमारे जो चौथे पैनलिस्ट हैं श्री राजू शर्मा, आप डायरेक्टर एंड हेड ऑफ कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी एट इंटरग्लोब एविएशन लिमिटेड, व्हाट वी नो एज इंडिगो एयरलाइंस. वहाँ पर आप सोशल इनिशिएटिव लीड करते हैं अपनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के इन एरियाज ऑफ चिल्ड्रन एंड एजुकेशन, विमेन एम्पावरमेंट, एनवायरनमेंट एंड हेरिटेज. आप ESG टास्क फोर्स जो इंडिगो संस्था की है उसमें आपका एक बड़ी महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका है, और विशेष तौर पर अपनी संस्था में सस्टेनेबिलिटी एलिमेंट्स को कंपनी के अंदर और जो आपके पार्टनर्स हैं उनके साथ मिलकर आप उसको बढ़ाने का काम करते हैं. आपका 2 दशक से ज़्यादा का अनुभव है जिसमें आपने NGOs, INGOs, गवर्नमेंट कॉर्पोरेट के साथ में आपने काम किया है. हमारे 5वें लास्ट बट नॉट द लीस्ट श्री प्रभाकांत जैन जी हैं. आप हमारे 5वें पैनलिस्ट हैं, और आप जो हैं DS ग्रुप ऑफ कंपनीज़ में आप कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी फंक्शन को लीड करते हैं, और DS ग्रुप जो है वो एक बड़ी लीडिंग FMCG ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है हमारे देश में. आपका जो अनुभव है वो स्ट्रेटेजिक प्लानिंग, पॉलिसी फॉर्मुलेशन, प्रोग्राम डिज़ाइनिंग, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, तमाम ऐसे मुद्दों पर आपने काम किया है, और विशेष तौर पर पानी, वाटर के सेक्टर में, लाइवलीहुड्स में आपका बड़ा काम रहा है. आपको कई जगह से आपको सम्मानित भी किया जा चुका है. अंततः गत्वा, लास्ट ऑफ कोर्स नॉट द लीस्ट, शशांक रस्तोगी आप यहाँ पर उपस्थित हैं. आप इस पैनल को मॉडरेट करेंगे. आप ब्रिजस्पैन ग्रुप के प्रिंसिपल हैं, और वहाँ पर आप मुंबई बेस्ड हैं. वहाँ पर आप अपनी संस्था में, ब्रिजस्पैन ग्रुप में, लीड करते हैं जो आपका रूरल प्रॉस्पेरिटी का वर्टिकल है अब हमारे देश में, और इसी के साथ में पे व्हाट इट टेक्स इंडिया इनिशिएटिव को आप को लीड कर रहे हैं. ब्रिजस्पैन के माध्यम से आप देश की कई CSR संस्थाओं की मदद करते हैं, फिलैंथ्रोपिक फाउंडेशन के साथ आप काम करते हैं, NGOs के साथ में काम करते हैं। आपने कई किताबें भी लिखी हैं, आपने कई रिपोर्ट्स भी जो है आपने उनको को ऑथर किया है, फोकसिंग ऑन गुड फंडिंग प्रैक्टिसेस लाइक ब्रिजिंग द गैप ऑन फंडिंग द ट्रू कॉस्ट ऑफ NGOs इन इंडिया, बिल्डिंग स्ट्रॉन्ग रेजिलिएंट NGOs in India. ऐसे आपके कई सारे अनुभव हैं. I'm sure all of us are looking forward to this very, very invigorating session on the subject of what role can corporates and CSR play in supporting localization and realization of localized SDGs. Over to Shri Shashank Rastogi.
Thanks a lot. So, सेशन से पहले मेरे को ब्रीफ दिया गया है कि लंच के बाद का सेशन है, फंडर्स को क्वेश्चन करना है और लोगों को जगाए रखना है. इतने कंस्ट्रेंट्स और इतना मुश्किल प्रॉब्लम है, ऐसा लग रहा है मैं NGO चला रहा हूँ. And to be honest, I apologize in case I offend someone with my sense of humor, but I'll have to do this, otherwise aap sab so jaoge. The other thing is, when initially Sudhir reached out and said कि अच्छा moderate करोगे session, मैंने कहा नहीं. Then he said funders का है, मैंने कहा हाँ ये करते हैं. साल भर वो सवाल पूछते हैं, 1 घंटे में हमें सवाल पूछने का मौका मिलेगा. So with that, I'll get into a serious mode. I'll talk about very interesting session. Thank you, PRADAN, and thank you, Axis Bank Foundation, for setting this up. Sunil Kumar ji mentioned in the morning that there's a long way to go. He talked about creating accountability towards the community, towards the local governments. Dr. Isaac talked about listening to the felt need and keeping it simple. These are easier said than done, unless a set of partners who are along the way, a group of partners who are part of this journey with the NGO are not aligned to it. And that set of partners are the funders. So basically, to start the conversation, first I'll just give a structure. What I'm trying to do is I'll ask focused questions. I did some research on these people. I want to ask them a little more difficult questions, and then give you all 4 minutes each. There will be a signal at 3-minute mark for you to wrap up your answer. And then hopefully we'll have some time left and we can interact, we can go further deeper and get the enjoyment of grilling the funders. So with that, Raju, I would want to start with you. And so how conscious are funders about aligning the initiatives with SDGs? And then Dr. Isaac mentioned about the fact that you are taking a top-down approach, you're looking at numbers and then figuring out those things. So how does focus of SDGs, which are typically looked at population level, national, state level, to the localization and the needs of community work out from the funder perspective?
Good afternoon, everyone. Namaskar. Pehli baat, before I start the conversation within the short 3-4 minutes, I would like to wish a happy Diwali, peaceful Diwali to everybody. Let there be peace everywhere. Let there be less smoke, less fire, let peace. I think that's the most important thing that all of us need today. Forget about donors, forget about non-donors, NGO partners. वो सब आएंगे, जाएंगे, रहेंगे, but what we need is lasting peace. With that note, I'd like to start my conversation. सुब्रत, पहली बात तो मुझे लगता है कि ये जो बाइनरीज हम बना रहे हैं ना कि डोनर्स, नॉन डोनर्स, पार्टनर, ये NGO, सिविल सोसाइटी, I think it is time for us to step away from all of these definitions and work on truly a trust-based partnership which needs to be practiced right at all levels. And the responsibility starts with me. Responsibility starts with each one of us in this room. That is my personal and my personal ethos and personal belief system. Now, to answer your question, Subrat, how conscious are corporates about localizing the SDG? I dare say, ऐसा कौन सा corporate है who cannot be conscious of the SDGs and localizing it SDGs? No corporate, no company, no government, no civil society group can dare not localize the SDGs in this today's context. And why I'm saying that? In today's world, we have what I often call, what we have often studied, what we have often quoted are the 4 mega trends in the world. The first mega trend is climate change. You know, climate change has affected all of us extremely badly. We all know that. Scarcity of natural resources. Yeah, you agree to that? Scarcity of natural resources. Unmanageable pollution. Delhi mein hum sabko pata hi hai kya ho raha hai. And last but not the least, inequality that's happening. ये सारे context को देखते हुए हर business को अपने business programs और अपने CSR interventions हो, अपने sustainable interventions हो, इनको ध्यान में रखते हुए they have to intervene the program. So gone are the days when any corporate can think of not localizing it or not daring about it. So I believe, I am of the firm belief that it is the need of this hour and it is required today that we have to localize it, and how it is to be done, I think it is a conversation that we can have in the whole. Or do you want me to continue?
You can probably give some pointers because...
So for me, there are 4 or 5 points that my experiences tells me that how do we do that? First of all, understanding the local context. Whenever we have any kind of program, whether it is a business, whether it's a development program, whether it's a CSR context, you need to we all need to contextualize our programs down at the grassroots level. So, for example, when we plan from Delhi or when we plan from Bombay, are we only thinking about starting the business, or are we still only about starting community development programs around our units, around where we work, or are we thinking about equitable ways of working? If indeed we are thinking about equitable way of working, why does, I want to ask myself, why does the northeast of India receive less than 3% of the CSR funds in the entire country? Are we talking about equity? So therefore, there's something is difficult then. Something is not correct. So I think that contextualized understanding is very, very important. How do you engage stakeholders? Whether the stakeholders are from the panchayat, from the community members, whether from the government, civil society, media, groups such as these organizations, the stakeholder engagement is extremely critical. How do we strategize, how do we integrate the SDGs into our business, into the core business? Today, most companies have tried to integrate SDGs into their business streams. We have an ESG, we have an ESG framework, so it is not about only doing a CSR and forgetting about it. The whole country today, the whole progressive companies who are doing really well in terms of their socio-economic indicators, they have tried to enhance their businesses through the through the ESG lens. तो चाहे उनके procurement policies हो, चाहे उनके HR policies हो, चाहे जो भी policies हो, those are all measured under ESG framework. और ये मैं progressive companies की बात कर रहा हूँ, companies that have survived and that wants to grow, and that wants to make a positive impact in this country and in this world. Thirdly, employee engagement. That's a very important part of localizing SDG. How do you involve our own employees into different aspects of the work? Then reporting and publishing the reports that how the company is managing. How transparent are the companies as far as their own reports are concerned? That is extremely critical. And one of the other pillar of localizing is CSR, the CSR projects that we all run. All progressive companies are required to design CSR programs in such a way that there is value creation at all levels. And last but not the least, how do we advocate for policy changes at the highest level by by understanding, by learning, unlearning the programs from the field. I think these are some of the pointers that I would like to highlight as far as localizing SDG is concerned.
Thanks, Raju. And I wanted to bring Prabhakant here. You actually lead CSR for a very different kind of company, a company which may have higher dependencies with the rural communities as well. So, like the same question to you in terms of the consciousness of localization, or like, if I may put it in a different way, having more community centricity in the programs, and how do you bring that about?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank PRADAN for inviting me for such a wonderful and in-depth discussion. Basically, just let me take this discussion forward from where Raju has discussed about ESG. So CSR is actually just 2% of their profit, but their business impact is actually multiple times is quite higher as compared to the CSR investment. And across the world actually, and again the SDG is not only about 16, 17 goals, actually there are 169 targets. So SDG actually it's a very, very comprehensive agenda for all developing challenges. So if you are addressing any challenges, somehow you are addressing the SDG. As simple as that, is for me at least. If we are doing quality education work, for that is also addressing SDG. If you are basically working on water, again then you are addressing the SDG. So moving forward for that, actually, I would like to change the shift. Actually, this is not the donor and kind of thing. So CSR को कई बार हम लोग सिर्फ funding domain से देखते हैं, तो it's not like that actually. CSR is, for me actually, it's a corporate approach to addressing the social and environmental challenges. So जब I'm talking of the approach and strategy, so there's a deep thought behind the corporate. For example, a company like us, when we were discussing what kind of CSR should we implement, so we thought actually there are different stakeholders for us. So we realized that farmers are very important stakeholder. So एक prima spectra में दिखता नहीं है कि farmers एक company में कहाँ से involve हो रहे हैं. But we know that in our ecosystem, whatever we are actually processing, हर processing item के पीछे एक farmers community is engaged. For example, if we are into the catch spices, तो spices grow करने वाले farmers हैं. एंड फार्मर्स के जो चैलेंजेस हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल अगर आप स्टडी करेंगे तो स्पाइसेस में देयर आर लॉट ऑफ इश्यूज बिकॉज ऑफ द क्लाइमेट चेंज. ये इश्यूज आ रहे हैं तो ये इश्यूज सिर्फ फार्मर्स के नहीं है, दोज इश्यूज आर आल्सो इम्पैक्टिंग आवर बिजनेस आल्सो. सो अगर आप बिजनेस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देखते हैं देन आल्सो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, फ्रॉम सोशल डेवलपमेंट परस्पेक्टिव से देखते हैं देन आल्सो इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सो वी एक्चुअली decided to work with the farmers, and then we realized that around 80-85% water in consuming in the agriculture sector. So then water is the very important, basically not only a resource, it's an economic tool for the farmers. So we designed a project called creation of water economic zone. So everywhere people are talking about the SEZ, special economic zone, jobs create hongi, industry develop hogi. So we thought actually we should think about in a rural perspective, and we should focus on the water so that farmer can actually flourish and farmer can basically improve their livelihood based on that water. So initially that project was started for the marginalized community. We reached out to Udaipur primarily with the tribals community, and that project is still we are working, and now it's expanded into the 4 districts of Madhya Pradesh. And the other important aspect I would like to share about the shared value thing. We designed another project, we call it as a scale, sustainable and comprehensive agriculture for livelihood enhancement. This was the basically full form. So that project actually is based on this specific commodity-driven farmer. So initially our thought was that we should work with the only marginalized farmer. We should not work with the large or medium farmer. What we realized actually they are also struggling because of these issues. For example, turmeric growing farmers erode. Generally they consider as a different kind of farmers, but still they are facing a lot of challenges. There are a lot of unfortunate news are coming from that side also. Similarly, areca growing farmers also in Karnataka, they have a lot of challenges, but people are not talking about because it looks like they are growing cash crop, but unke saath issues nahi honge. But there are a lot of issues are with them. They are also struggling because in sometime cash crop there a lot of investment is there, and against the return, it's a very, very tricky situation for that. So we are working with that. We believe that whatever challenges they are facing, they are our challenges. वो challenge हमारे लिए भी उतने ही equally critical हैं. And now coming to this, our approach about the localization of SDGs, so I would like to, one this agenda, we are actually reaching out to the local problems, and we believe that solution come from the field only. So in our case, basically जितने भी हमारे partners हैं, and we also work with the PRADAN, so they can understand what kind of liberty they have in terms of the planning and execution. So when जब bottom to top जब planning होती है, जब grassroots पे detailed planning होती है और उसको अगर corporate accept करते हैं, so it's about the localization of SDG rather than कि corporate अपना agenda देके उसको implement करवाना चाहेगा, that may be the wrong approach. So we believe in that. So in that form, would like to close my remark here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Prabhakant. And both of you have made really relevant points about building trust, understanding the context. Raju, you talked about the change begins from me. I'll move on and I'll use Subrat in this panel as a counterweight. We have 4 funders, 1 NGO. Otherwise, ulta hi hota hai. एक फंडिंग अपॉर्चुनिटी होती है और 50 NGO होते हैं. तो so, Subrat, I wanted to talk about the same issue from an NGO perspective.
But before you go, but
yeah.
एक NGO 50 के बराबर होती है.
Completely agree, especially if that NGO is FES. so Subrat, I wanted to talk about the same issue, and we have what I would classify as Raju, you said, more progressive businesses or more progressive funders on the panel. But in the larger ecosystem, and FES works on issues which are not, they're related to the community, but not very obvious, not very intuitive on their relation to the community for an urban dweller like me. So how easy or how difficult is it for you to create that community centricity, that localization aspect, and convince the funders on that? And how do you go about doing that?
Thanks, Sashank. Thanks, Pradhan, for the opportunity. And yeah, it's a challenge being in this panel. But yeah, I just wanted to just wanted to share what FES does primarily, and then what is the challenge that we face. We work largely on conserving or restoring natural resources, involving communities in governing these resources, as well as seeing that how economic opportunities, how this work can actually help in improving the economic opportunities for poorer communities. And in doing so, we are the fundamental principles that we use is about commons and commoning, and that's a very difficult, I would say, thing to explain to everyone, or to at least in the initial stages of association with any partner organization, be it donor or even with district administration or government. But what we try and do is to, while that is a key principle that the organization tries to look at and work towards as a mission for itself, what we try and do is also to look at and break it up into components of what are the key components that we are working on, be it watershed, be it in the form of watershed development, regeneration, revegetation, governance kind of aspects, and approach basically different donors on those terms initially. But as what we have seen over a period of time, there is much appreciation of the concept, and also to understand that this kind of holistic kind of understanding is important. Also that when we are looking at this as a very complex kind of an issue, it requires working not and primarily when we are working on a difficult area like trying to look at how do we improve stewardship of communities over their resources and over their agenda. It is a very, I would say, difficult issue even to quantify and convince any kind of in a project kind of term. But it is more, I would say, a challenge that we take it to ourselves to integrate programs and projects to actually help in a longer term benefits at the community level. And that is, I would say, one of the strategies that works out. But in many cases, say proof of concepts, visits from donors and supporters actually helps in bringing out that the nuances in what we do more clearly, so that the larger concept could be supported.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Subrat. So keeping this as a central tenet and not leaving it, it's like creating more immersion opportunities for funders and keeping at it, so that can help. I wanted to come to Shagun here. Shagun, Co-Impact is a very unique funder in the way you work. You are pretty flexible, you give large grants, but at the same time, your theory of change is to bring about systems change and look at key levers which can bring transformative impact. And would that be at loggerheads with like the community-centric approach or the localization approach that we are discussing?
Yeah, thanks a lot for this question. So, and thanks a lot to PRADAN and the organizers for inviting me. So I think what I would say, and also just building on what everyone has said, I think what is very important from a co-impact perspective is that the expertise of the changes that we want to bring about, because ultimately we are all here because we want to see some kind of a change in the positive sense, but that change, who is it for? And how much are those people involved in that change-making process, right? So for co-impact, we are really a lot about this perspective around philanthropy. And the idea is that philanthropy is not really there to even come in and do things that governments are supposed to do, because there's no way we can compete with the resources that are available to the public systems, right? So at Co-Impact, we talk about system change, and there are public systems, there are market systems, there are community systems. We are primarily, our theory of change is that when expertise that is on the ground, through the non-profit, through the communities themselves, if that expertise can come and work to make the systems better, to make the systems that work for the people better, then true and lasting change can happen. Otherwise, whatever we may try to do will just be a small piece, or it will just be the tip of the iceberg. So that's the first principle. So for us, it is very program partner centric. It is the fact that we don't have a strong point of view that this is what needs to happen. The partners themselves know what's on the ground. Now to your question, I personally think that if we take a step back, what are these SDGs, right? SDGs are meant to provide a framework, a goal post that that globally everyone can agree on, right? And I have personally a background in research, and what we know is that when we are trying to do something which is very complex, but research and measurement is all about making it simple, simplifying it so that you can track it, measure it. But that comes at odds because the reality that you're trying to change is so complex, so multidimensional. So SDGs really provide that window where all different types of countries and stakeholders are now signing in on and saying that we will look into this, right? But that's just the beginning point. After that, how does that get translated in a way that works for everyone is where we are seeing all of this process happening. Now to your question, I don't think those two things are at loggerheads. Simply because there are organizations, you know, PRADAN being a good example, FES being another example, who are actually trying to get these voices of these people, trying to give these people a seat on the table so that they can not just be people who are receiving some development, but can actually be the agents of change themselves and say, this is my perspective. So in the morning, Dr. Thomas Isaac said this very good line that the lived experience cannot compete with the data, etc. Now data is obviously needed at that macro level, but So how do we bring, like how does this all aggregate up in a way that's systematic? And I think there are organizations, so for co-impact, of course, every organization is important. The smaller organizations that are just starting out, that are doing very niche work are also important, but that's not in our wheelhouse. We typically look for organizations that can make systems better, that can leverage like what FES is trying to do, right? Make the communities take ownership of these commons and be a part of that, setting that agenda. So far we have been very impressed, especially in India, with the number of organizations that are our program partners that are doing such wonderful work, which is at the right cusp of systems change, but also communities.
And does that mean that there are certain capacities or capabilities that the organizations need to build beyond like serving the community manner? And what's your point of view on that?
So I do think that one of the big things that comes out all the time is impact. Okay, what's your impact? And impact can be looked at in many different ways. But I think this ability to measure and track, for example, so what we call as LME, and it's used in many different ways, those are things that we do encourage the organizations to invest in, not just so that they can tell their stories better, but so that they become tools for their own learning to know how we are doing and what we are doing. And many times this LME gets perceived as, oh my God, another big thing, let me bring a consultant on board, but how can they take ownership of that? So that's one, but there are some other types of, so for co-impact, it's not just funding, we also provide tools, etc., to help them really kind of build this systems thinking. So systems thinking is not just, oh, this is a problem, my organization is trying to solve for this problem, but what is the system of today? Where are you a small piece in this big system? And what would you like the system to be tomorrow? So we have modules on this. We have a lot of tools and frameworks that we provide to our partners. So that's what we do.
Sure. Sorry, I still want to stay with you because just one thing more is about the fact that India being such a complex country, the needs of the community can change within a 100-kilometer radius, which means that the kind of the approach, the thinking, the way of working that you're talking about needs to be far more decentralized in that way. So is that also something that you focus on?
Yes, so I think that if you will now look, I mean, we don't have enough time, but if I look at the portfolio of organizations that we have been supporting, they all actually are having a decentralized model in and of themselves. Right, so which also say that there is something at the back of the mind. So we first of all try not to go in for the typical NGO. So it is local, it is very much local centric. But like you said, not every organization that's local is big enough to have that systems thing. They may not have inroads into the government, etc. Yeah. But we have been very fortunate to have partners that follow a very decentralized, right? You know, Subrat is right here, PRADAN is here, we have so many other programs, like we talked about ultra poverty in Bihar, the Jivika initiative. So Co-Impact has been funding JPAL, has been funding Bandhan Konagar. So that's a model, and there are many organizations like that.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. And I'll let you off the hook now. So I'll move to Sushmita. Sushmita, Tata Trust has been the OG, like the original grant maker, original promoter of NGOs, if I may say so. And you work with hundreds of NGOs across the country. So how does this aspect of localization while keeping an eye on SDG work out for Tata Trust?
Thank you very much, Shashank, for the question. And I would like to first begin with acknowledging all my seniors and colleagues in this room with whom, who held my hand and opened the entire development sector to me. And I thank Tata Trust for the opportunity for choosing me to be in the panel today, because as Raju said, when I represent trust, I am amongst you, I was with you, I am with you. So there's actually no divide as such as who is donor, and it's all a beautiful rainbow, and we are trying to do a good work, and each one of us is playing a different role. So yeah, I do not see a distinction there, and I don't think Trust sees a distinction there. And Trust has always had, it believes in building resilient communities and together. So when you say of localizing the SDGs and how trust works, so if you see trust works pan-India, it supports all organizations, and like in the beginning of the sessions, people said, it's felt need of the community. So trust believes the organizations who are working directly in the geography, in the local domain, who are aware of what that Didi or Dada needs, what the situation over there. If trust is able to support those organizations, it believes it is actually helping in bringing about the SDGs at local level, because the people are there and the solution provider, like they all are together working with each other. So I think trust very well, believes in it and does it. And from Shagun's, the thing of also trust believes in research-based policy influencing. So bringing sectoral changes, which is also required. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sushmita. Back to a difficult question with Subrat. So Subrat, the funders talked about capacity building of NGOs. Is there a need for capacity building of funders in the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think when I was speaking earlier, I was saying that it definitely takes time, especially in the context that we are working and in the issues that we are working, to understand this in a holistic manner. It does take time. Initially, while the concept might be simple as part of the project proposal, project development kind of thing, but as it gets rolled out on the ground, and as a program or as an NGO, it is not like one works isolatedly on a particular project. They work with the government, they work with different stakeholders within that thing, and therefore the outcomes that are coming in is not as a result of just the project alone, but about what is the kind of engagement of different stakeholders in that process. And understanding that, and understanding the change, and understanding the outcomes that evolves out of such processes is an important part. And I think looking at it just from a project perspective, or from the metric of project perspective, is, I would say, is a limited, might have a limited outcome, but the outcome actually on the ground is much larger than what exactly is reported or is visible. And that understanding is, I think, appreciating that understanding and appreciating that the complexity in complexity and in the situation, as well as in the engagement, and seeing it as a whole is an important component. That is what I would like to add here.
Raju, you want to add?
Though I'm on the so-called donor side, I'd like to respond to this. And I want to be extremely candid here. And I believe that capacity building is required, both at the donor end and both at the NGO end. Therefore, right at the beginning of the conversation, I said that the binaries of this donor, donor, and what? NGO, civil society, all that has to go. The learning has to happen at both ways. Do you think, as a donor in Indigo, I will understand all the states, all the communities in India? I will be a fool to understand that. I don't understand. I'm telling you here. What do? I learn from my partner. I have learned extremely from PRADAN. I have learned from FES. I learned from each one of you in the room. And what stops you from learning from me? Corporates bring brilliant management aspects. Civil society groups, NGOs bring brilliant innovations. This is what the marriage has to happen. The brilliance of the civil society group, the brilliance of the corporate has to happen, and each group has to learn from each other. There is no shy in saying that I need to learn from each one of you, and similarly. So I think that's something which needs to be completely clear. I don't want to bush beat around the bush. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Raju. And please.
It's a very actually interesting topic, and I'm very much aligned with the Raju's word that capacity building is required both end. But एक concept है इसको बहुत अच्छे से समझना जरूरी है कि CSR is not just a funding. ये actually बहुत wrong perception है development sector में कि NGOs are expecting corporates के पास CSR money है, इसको just उनको देना है. We are accountable towards MCA. आपको शायद actually it's really difficult to understand from the NGO perspective कि what kind of complexity is there behind CSR. It has to be reported into very detailed manner. We have to submit the each and every detailed which partner, even now partners are also registered under the MCA. They have also got the CSR form 1. So now this MCA is very, very aggressive towards the CSR funding. So CSR actually is a compliance. If it is a compliance, it has to be spent in a very, very precise manner. It has to be very, very process driven. So that we need to understand, number one. The second part, NGOs and corporates both are from the extreme corner. NGOs feel that actually we know the community, we know how to address the issues, and corporates feel that actually this is our money, it should be spent according to me at the top level. And professional like me, Raju, and any other CSR head, they are basically bridge between both of them. So we need to understand their perspective also, we need to understand their perspective also. We have to actually bring both of them together. Then we can implement the successful, impactful CSR project. So it's a very difficult task that we have to manage. I think you must.
Somebody spoke about lived experience today. I have a lived experience. Like in all my 20 years of experiences, when I have met few NGO partners, आपका प्रोग्राम कैसा चल रहा है? बढ़िया चल रहा है. यहाँ तक तो मेरे को ठीक रखता है. जब वो बोलते हैं बहुत बढ़िया चल रहा है, then I got worried. Seriously, I get worried. When I go to the villages, what happens is that there is a lot of problem that happens in the data management at the grassroots level. Okay, data comes from the state level, data comes from the national level of the NGOs, but where is that base data managed? That is the most authentic data. When the data is managed at the micro level, at the village women's household, or at the unit level, that's the most. Who is verifying that data? How is that data coming to the corporate to be reported to the ministry? That is very, very extremely important. So I'm saying that doesn't mean that we leave smaller organizations. Everybody cannot have the capacity. Capacity building of the communications, capacity building of writing, capacity building of communicating at the, not at the best of the English, but in simple terms which is to be understood by all parties. These things are very, very critical at this point in time, because as he rightly said, all corporates are also responsible for this. It's a shareholder's money. It's not the corporate's money as such. It's the shareholder's money which one is looking at. Therefore, there are certain duties, roles and responsibilities that need to be done by each of the parties, whichever side of the table you are sitting on. And lastly, having said that, as one of the responsibilities that we donors have is that we need not only look at the big INGOs or the NGOs as such. There is a responsibility for us also to groom and nurture smaller NGOs that are working today, fantastic work at the grassroots level. They are finding the best solutions there. How do we rope them us along with the CSR partners? Maybe we have a concept, in Indigo we have a concept of a mother NGO tending to smaller NGOs and all of that. There can be innovation. If the attitude is right, we can reach out to all. So I rest my case, so to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Raju. And very interesting point if I combine both your points. Basically, what right now the situation is that the corporate leadership is at one extreme, the NGO leadership may be on the other extreme, and the right solution is to look at this, as Raju you said, it's not a binary, it's a partnership, it's one entity together. And that difficult role falls on the CSR head in a way. And I think that empathy towards CSR professionals may go a long way. Sorry. So empathy is definitely very important. And for Sushmita and Shagun, I wanted to pick one statement that Subrat made. When he was talking about the complexity, he said, when you're working in a community-centric approach, there are far more complexity. And the onus of converting that complex approach into projects which can get funded falls on the NGO, which seems to be a very difficult task. So people with your kind of experience, can you share how can that burden be shared by funders of like either looking at it in the whole complexity or helping break it down into a manageable piece? So Sushmita, you want to go first or Shagun, you?
Okay. Yes, definitely problems are complex. And to take a step towards that is, I think at Trust what we are now doing is, co-creation. So co-creation gives an opportunity where, like Raju said, there's a lot to learn from the corporate way of working, so the management skills, M&E skills, and then from the ground, the felt need and the complexity of the problem. So co-creation where there's mutual respect for each other, there's no up and down or hierarchy, but we all are partners in this together. I think that gives the space to create, platform to address these complex issues, as well as it gives empathy to extend the timeline and not, 24 months, 36 months, but to empathize with it and to understand that, yes, the solutions may not come in 36 months. So we have that scope and that understanding, and we built it together that, yes, there's another phase coming to it. We will track it and see how it's going and then move forward. Yeah, if that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Shagun?
Yeah, I mean, I would completely agree with what Sushmita just said. So I think at Co-Impact, in fact, we now have this model where we start off with a design grant, which is a smaller size grant that we give for 1 year to the potential program partner, and we provide them with tools, etc., that I mentioned, and then we kind of co-create, we become on this journey where again the partner is on the driver's seat, but we come in, we give our suggestions, we also encourage them to bring on a coach. A coach is someone that's not someone who's like a consultant who's just writing the thing for them, but someone who will ask them tough questions, who will nudge them back, etc. And we find that a lot of our program partners have really appreciated this design phase and the opportunity it gives them to really relook at their entire strategy, right? And after this design phase, then we come in with that flexible money, which is more longer term. But now that program partner has a vision, it's a strategy which they say for 5 years, this is what we want to do. And part of it Co-Impact is giving. So you are kind of flipping the NGO going from funder to funder, responding to RFPs to saying now, this is what I feel is going to make a difference. This is what's going to transform the lives of people. And can the donors come and support us? So that is something that we think is really important. Having said that, I do want to acknowledge that while we want to say that we are all one community and one world, the power asymmetry does exist. Ultimately, who has the checkbook and the person who's wanting, whether we like it or not, they would try and take up any suggestion that we give, even if that suggestion doesn't make sense, right? So to break that culture, I think the onus is on the funders to really go all out and make them understand, because ultimately the program partners do feel that they must accommodate the vision and the wishes of the funders to some extent, right? So, and for us, and the other thing I would say is that this thing that Subrat said, how do you then convey the work that you are doing? We also then have to convey to someone else, right? So the other way that we try to do is that if your prospectus or strategy document is really big, then we take up that load of putting it into a 2 or 3 page recommendation memo, because they won't have the time to read through the whole thing, right? So it is in a way something that we are all working, but my takeaway is the more involved and engaged the funders are in this journey, and I agree there are resource constraints, you can't always be, usually donors are very small, we have very, very small teams. But the more you can do it, the better the outcome is for everyone.
Subrat, any last words?
No, just to add to what Shagun said, is I think the process that Co-Impact we had worked with on the program, I think it allows a lot of scope to to understand, to actually create a much better programmatic action for a longer period of time. And I think the only aspect that I wanted to add is the effort that goes in such programs is something that different other partners also have to believe in and to support that concept as it is. But every time, if I take that concept, saying that this is something, this is a strategic plan for 5 years or 10 years, not many donors would accept that same program as a design. But that is something that one needs to work on. I would not say this is an onus on anyone to actually say that, okay, this is what has to be accepted, because each one has their own objective and own objectives to meet, and that is something that we need to bring in a way that how we can work on that. And while like the SDGs is more of a holistic thing which everyone might agree to, but always it is something like we can support this component because of the sectoral nature of the work, both for donors as well as for NGOs.
So we are almost at time, so I just wanted to thank all of you. I think quite a lot of takeaways, looking at SDGs as a framework to simplify a very complex situation, but not making them the way to go about doing things. And having that empathy, that trust, that approach of collaboration between the funder and the NGO, that can really help us in localization of SDGs, the message that I take. One message I have for PRADAN is, like, as a consultant, we do pattern recognition. What I can recognize as a pattern is progressive funders have experience in development sector. So you're creating human resources for the development sector. Maybe you should also start thinking of placing people in funding organizations now.
So the funding scenario in India, so just to add on here, the funding scenario in India in the last 5-10 years, particularly after 2014 when the bill came into being, it has changed dramatically. If you see earlier, it was a time of Oxfams and American India Foundations or other funding agencies. Now it's kindly shifted. So I think as we progress, as we go, there will be a lot of learnings and unlearnings that happens. Like today what has happened is also a contribution of these kind of forums initiated by PRADAN and Access Foundation and all of that. I think if the binaries are of donors and these things are diffused as much, I think there is a lot of work that together people can do.
Thanks a lot, Raju, and thank you everyone for hearing us out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shashank, and thank you to each panel member for the insightful discussion. On behalf of Axis Bank Foundation and PRADAN, we would like to facilitate our speakers, and for that I would like to invite Bala on stage. Samagam is a joint initiative of Axis Bank of Foundation and PRADAN, supported by NITI Aayog and CII Foundation. No, we had served a good food. That's what I was saying.
In all